the people who elected them is altered. This has a corrosive effect on our democracy. Voters lose trust in elections. The prospect of MPs being enticed by backroom deals emerges. And the notion that only government members get resources for their constituencies smacks of the pork barrel politics more reminiscent of the United States Deep South than in Canada. In my own riding of Vancouver Kingsway, David Emerson crossed the floor shortly after being elected in 2006, in fact only weeks after that, to sit with the Conservatives. Citizens across the political spectrum in the community I represent were justifiably outraged, and justifiably so, because they knew something fundamental had been taken from them. That experience is why I have fought for this legislation for years. Today, the stakes have only grown higher. Mark Carney has become the first Prime Minister in Canadian history to assemble a majority government through floor crossing instead of through the ballot box. The balance of power in this House was shifted, not by voters in an election, but by political operatives in the back rooms, holding private conversations hidden from the public. While that may not be illegal, it is suitably, inherently undemocratic. Now, when governments are built not on the mandate of voters, but on the private calculations of politicians, the very legitimacy of our institutions is called into question. It must not be allowed to happen again. This bill, it should be noted, will not ban floor crossing, nor the option to sit as an independent. The latter is a valid protection against party oppression and to preserve the ability of an MP to express themselves on matters of conscience. It would, though, require anybody who wants to cross the floor to sit in a caucus other than with the party that they were elected for to seek the approval of their constituents through a by-election. If an MP believes that they have valid reasons for crossing the floor, then they should have no problem putting that argument to the test of the voters where it should be. I'm hoping that all of my colleagues in the House of Commons join with me and vote to change this odious practice and do a favour for democracy in Canada by restoring respect for the desire of voters at the ballot box.
What do you hope Dominic LeBlanc is going to accomplish in Washington today?
Do you feel like the Liberal government, given the fact that it's formed the majority off of 5 floor crossings, that they'll give you anything on this kind of initiative?
Well, hope springs eternal. You know, I'm not optimistic given the statements that they've made to date, but it's never too late, I don't think, for all of us as politicians to come together for the health of our democracy. And this is not a partisan issue. This applies to every party, to every MP, regardless of where they sit in this House. I think we've seen examples of MPs from every party who have crossed the floor. What I want to talk about today is the fundamental sanctity of the ballot box in a democracy and respect for voters. And once again, this doesn't ban floor crossing. It simply says that there should not be a unilateral decision of one person. It should be fundamentally the decision of the voters who sent us here. And so I'm hoping that the Liberal government can see that. I think there's been a change of position. I'm discerning in the Conservatives, so maybe it'll happen in Liberals as well.
Well, this is not a new problem, floor crossing. It's been around for a while. It's been in your riding before. Why are you bringing this now?
Well, I brought it every parliament since I was first elected in 2008. It's a persistent problem that has occurred. I think what's changed now is we've never before seen a government change the complexion of the government that Canadians sent here, i.e. a minority, into a majority by 5 floor crossings. In fact, I can't remember a time in Canadian history when there were 5 people who crossed the floor in one parliament. So this isn't just the case of a single person crossing the floor. This has fundamentally altered the nature of the government that Canadians elected. And so I think it's very important that this bill be considered and debated and hopefully passed in this House.
Mr. Davies, what do you hope Minister LeBlanc accomplishes in Washington today?
Well, the same thing I think all Canadians want, which is we want an end to the illegal unjustified tariffs that are placed on us. We'd like to see relations economically and politically improve with the United States. I think we all understand the gravity of the situation. So hopefully Mr. LeBlanc will make some progress in both those regards.
And to that point, do you agree with Mr. Poilievre's comments this morning that being in a technical recession puts us in a worse negotiating position with the U.S.?
I'm not so sure that the state of the Canadian economy has that much of a role to play. I mean, we are in a recession. That's not good news. I don't think any Canadian's happy with that, and I think it shows the work that needs to be done here. But I think the problems with the Trump administration are fundamentally deeper than that. I think it hasn't changed the basic Canadian position. We need to diversify our trading partners. We need to build more things here. We need to get more value from our raw resources, and we need to become stronger and more independent as an economy. So fundamentally, I don't think it changes much.
On the floor crossing, can I just ask, there's at least 14 Liberal MPs that have complained privately about the Prime Minister rolling back climate stuff. One of them has gone as far as to announce he's going to resign. For the NDP, why not be targeting those people, trying to get them play the game that everyone else in this building is playing and try to get them to cross over to your side rather than trying to get the practice, which has been around for a long time, banned under a majority government that's not likely to reverse its position on it? So why not try to get Stephen Guilbeault to sit as an NDP member?
Well, Mark, I think you've put your finger right on the heart of the problem. I think political opportunism has gotten to such a point in this place that it's overriding fundamental respect for democracy. And just because you can gain from violating democratic principles doesn't mean you should. And I think that's why this problem has persisted through many parliaments, is that, Conservatives don't like floor crossing when they're in opposition, then they take them when they're in government. Liberals, I think, say the same thing. I think what we need to do is rise above our own personal partisan interests and think of the health of our parliament, the health of our democracy, and frankly, the integrity of our voters. That's what this bill is about. Again, you know what? If one of those Liberal MPs is really unhappy with the government, nothing stops them from resigning their seat. There'll be an upcoming by-election and running for a different party if they want to do that. That's at least a democratic way to do it, as opposed to backroom deals that raise all sorts of concerns about legitimacy and promises and whether or not Canadians can have faith in the sanctity of their parliament.
Carney ran on his economic bona fides. What do you make of us being in a technical recession a year after him being elected? What do you attribute it to?
Well, I don't think it's a check mark in his corner. He is a noted economist. He has taken very, very deliberate and I would argue very conservative economic policies in this parliament, and so far they're not working, I guess, is the obvious answer. When you have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, that doesn't bode well for your economic policies.
Conservatives potentially being open to supporting this bill, just given, everything that's happened in the last 8 to 9 months?
Well, I just introduced it this morning, so I haven't had a chance to talk to them directly, but through my conversations with them recently and some of the comments I've read in the media, I think they're open to voting for this bill for the first time. I should also say as well that let's not forget the feedback that we've been getting from voters across this country. I can tell you I have not run into a single voter yet, not one, who has told me they're fully behind floor crossing, they think it's valid, they'd like to see more of it. Not a person has said that to me. On the contrary, what they say is they find it odious, they find it an affront to democracy, and they absolutely believe in the practicality and the wisdom of the approach that I'm proposing today, which is you can do it, just put the test to your voters, and then you'll know. It's funny, every person who crosses the floor generally comes out and says this is what their voters want. But every one of them, to a person, refuses to put that to the actual test of their voters. I think there's a fundamental breakdown there. So,
Bloc's bill repealing the Clarity Act and recognizing the 50+1?
I'll leave that to Avi Lewis to comment on. He'll be the spokesperson on that bill.
You know politics very well, and you can tell me that Matt Genereux, Chris D'Entremont, Michael Ma are all MPs in areas that are much more competitive between Liberals and Conservatives. Marilyn Gladu is an exception. Do you see pork bellying there as the reason why she crossed?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of Ms. Gladue, because she was the person who, to her credit, very explicitly vocalized what we all feared and suspected, which is that she thought she would get more resources for her constituency because she sat on the government side. Now, is that how we want policy to be made in this country? I thought resources should be allocated based on equity, based on solid rationale, based on equity, not based on which side of the house you sit on. I mean, again, that's U.S.-style Southern pork barrel politics, and I don't think Canadians support that. So that's another reason that I'm more concerned about this bill now than I used to be, because now you have MPs who cross the floor openly saying that they think that they can get more government pork in their riding. That's not the way government should work.
Don, just on this social question of anti-Semitism, yesterday Mark Carney recognized it and called it a crisis. What do you think is the driver of anti-Semitism in Canadian society today?
Well, anti-Semitism has been a persistent problem, not only in Canada but around the world, as is Islamophobia and all sorts of hatred. And I think every society must keep it at the forefront of our thinking and our policy making. And we have to be quick to act, because once that kind of political cancer takes root, it grows exponentially, and it's harder to root out. So I'm all in favor of having very strong policies to treat all Canadians equally, to attack hate in all of its forms wherever it happens. And probably events in the Middle East, I would say, have been a proximate cause of the rise of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in this country. We don't operate in a vacuum. Our country is affected by global events, and I think that this is just it served to shine a light on a problem that was there before, and it behooves us to do more work to address it now.
The AI strategy is coming out this week. What do you want to see in it? What don't you want to see?
It's funny you should mention that. I listened to a wonderful podcast on CBC this morning. It was on Front Burner, and it was extremely alarming what's going on in AI. There's reports of Alibaba in China having an AI program that, on its own volition, tried to break out and mine cryptocurrency without anybody programming it. There's a case of an AI program in Berkeley that has tried to preserve another AI program that was being wound down without anybody programming it. There are serious pressing issues right now, I think, of AI, not to mention the mass unemployment that it is capable of producing. And I think this Parliament is way behind. I think our government is asleep at the switch, as it were, because I think that technology is moving much more rapidly, and we don't have any guardrails around it. So I think I would like to see this Parliament and government make this a #1 priority to deal with AI. And we can harness the best parts of AI and use that technology for positive purposes, but at the same time, I think it's terribly completely unregulated now, and terribly dangerous if we don't get some guardrails up on it soon. Well, it can do certain things much faster and process information way better. I mean, I've heard in terms of medical research and, for instance, in addressing certain forms of cancer, AI may be very helpful. So I'm familiar with it in the healthcare sector more than others. But, like all technologies, it has capacity to be used for good and the capacity to be used for bad. But this is a classic example where I think government has a very critical role to play. We can't just leave it up to the 10 multi-billionaires of the world to pursue unbridled, unlimited AI for a personal private profit motive. We have to take a good look at what the impacts of this might be on our society as a whole and on individuals. And that work is not happening right now. So I think we need to get to work on that on the double.
Aware of any update on the labor consultations and the right to strike, or anything new on that front after, you guys have raised, and labor unions have raised complaints about how that process was going, but do you have any idea of?
No, not yet. I mean, I think there's, from coast to coast to coast, labor sounded the alarm over what looked to be a very quick and frankly, I don't think legitimate consultation to make major changes to the way labour relations are conducted in this country. So I've yet to hear the government respond to that. Thanks. Thank you very much.